Hello book nerds, and welcome back to another monthly reading wrap-up. Happy September. August was a pretty good month when it came to reading, which kind of took me by surprise, seeing as it's back to school. It's a pretty even mix between audio, print, and Kindle books that I read. So the very first one that I started with was a free audio book through Audible, and it's called Your Brain's Not Broken by Tamara Rosier. And it's all about managing and navigating your emotions in your life if you are struggling with ADHD. This was a good one for somebody to read if they're just kind of starting to dive into learning about ADHD, whether they have it themselves or they know somebody that is struggling with it. It gave a pretty good overview of ADHD and all the ways it can impact somebody's life, and it also had some exercises for people to try out to kind of help manage areas of difficulty. It didn't go as in-depth as I was hoping into certain aspects, but it's a great resource. It's a free audiobook, and so it's a good option to check out if you are interested in learning more about ADHD. I'm joined by two snoozing pups, and Hank is telling me that I'm taking up too much of the bed, even though I'm just on one tiny little corner. But it's his world, and we're all just living in it. Next up, I read Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood, and this one was really good. I really enjoyed it. I was really engaged with the storyline. I was invested in the characters. I cared about finding out what happened to them and how they turned out. The next one that I read was An Arc, and this is coming out in October now, I believe. And this one blew me away. This was This Girl's a Killer by M.S.C. Wells. I ate this up. It's the story of a woman who is a pharmaceutical sales rep, and she also kills bad men. And so when her very best friend starts dating a new man who sends her alarm bells ringing, she's in a tough spot. So it was very girl boss Dexter vibes, and there's a lot of wit, a lot of humor, a lot of banter, which was a really nice balance for some of the more gruesome scenes that were depicted. But I'm invested. This was a fantastic debut novel, and I'm really hoping that sometime down the road Emma Wells can add on to Cordelia's story, because I want more. Okay, and next up I read Freida McFadden's newest release, her satirical novella. It's called The Widow's Husband's Secret Lie, and this is it's a novella, so it's short, and she's kind of pulling in a lot of elements from her other stories to make fun of. It reminded me a little bit of the show that came out a while back with Kristen Bell, and it was like a satirical suspense. Anyway, it just had a lot of common tropes for psychological thrillers, and just kind of generally being poked fun at. I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite, but it was a nice kind of palate cleanser. I think when I started reading it, I was more in the mood for a legit thriller and not a satire, so that might have been why it was a little off for me, but it was something to read. And then after that, I read Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is a very Ali Hazelwood heavy month, I just realized. So my second read for Ali Hazelwood was Bride, and I really liked this one. I really, really liked this one. I was kind of getting some Crescent City vibes from this, with the just kind of like general structure of the story. You know, what with our main character, Misery, is searching for her best friend who has gone missing. And then, you know, we've got some political things at play and conflict between the humans, the weres, and the vampires. So just some similarities in structure I noticed in that regard. But I really liked it. The premise is that the main character, Misery, is a vampire, and she, for a number of reasons, doesn't fit in with the other vampires. As a child, she was sent to live as collateral for the humans, so she lived among humans for a decade, and so in that kind of influential time period when she should be learning the vampire customs and culture, she was super disconnected from that aspect of her identity. And so now that she's an adult living as a vampire, she doesn't have that connection to her people. And then in an attempt to kind of bring peace between the vampires and the werewolves, it's decided that there needs to be an alliance. And so she ends up marrying the alpha werewolf to kind of unite the two groups and try to foster peace. And so kind of adapting to life in the were world as a vampire who isn't really a vampire, brought some struggles, and throughout she's also still trying to track down her best friend and find out what happened to her. So this was a great one. I loved it. It was a really good introduction to fall, I thought. And yeah, kind of helped me transition out of my lighthearted summer reads that I've been focusing on and into kind of the darker, more suspenseful, or, you know, more fantasy reads that I feel like work the best for fall. And then kind of keeping up with that same theme, next up I read Divine Rivals. So another one that I've heard incredible things about but haven't gotten around to pulling down off the shelf yet, and I also loved this one. If you haven't read it yet, the premise is that our main character is working to get a job as a journalist at a local paper, and she is living in kind of a war-torn place right now, and her brother goes off to fight, and as she is sending him letters while he's away, she quickly finds out that the letters aren't going to him, but she's getting letters in return from somebody who has their typewriters have a connection, and so they communicate through their letters, and we find out pretty early on that the person receiving her letters and writing back to her is her rival at the newspaper. And so they start to develop this kind of bond and connection without her knowing that it's him. So this was another one that I just kind of sank right into and devoured. It was so good. And I have Ruthless Vows sitting on my shelf that I will probably be pulling down this month to read the next in the series. After that, I read an audiobook that I saw on a Facebook group that I'm in, and I'm so glad that I found it on Libby and read it. It's called The Arrangement by Kiersten Modglin. And this is a short thriller. I think it was about 6 hours in length. And it took a direction that I was not expecting. It had me hooked. The premise is that we have a couple who's married, and they're going through a rough patch. So in an attempt to try to rekindle and revive their marriage, they decide to come up with an arrangement that will allow them to spend time outside of their marriage. However, it turns very quickly. Very, very quickly. And at first, it seems like the problem, like, I think once their situation is established and we as readers understand what they're going through and what they're trying to achieve, and we start to see them try to navigate this new setup. It looks like one potential issue is going to be the issue, and it's not. So that's about as detailed as I can get without giving away the twists, because the twists in that were really good and really unexpected. I read, in some of the feedback that I read about that book, some people felt as they were going through the first half or so that it was reading more like a romance or a lit fic, and there wasn't any like suspense or drama, and that quickly changes right around the halfway mark. So it is a short one. Like I said, it's 6 hours, and then if you are somebody who reads your audiobooks on a faster speed, I think I read it in 3.5 to 4 hours. It's not a very big commitment, and so just kind of power through in that beginning part if you're feeling like this isn't headed in the direction you thought it would, because it will turn around, I promise you. And then the last one that I read this month was If You Tell a Lie by Lucinda, and this was a good one as well. It tells the story of a group of girls that met as kids when they were going to summer camp every summer, and how they bonded and became this, developed this really strong friendship as kids, that then and then as they returned to camp every summer and got to continue to connect and build that relationship. And then something happens one summer, and they get caught up in one of the girls' her plan to pursue a romantic interest that is not an appropriate romantic interest for her. So the rest of the girls get caught up in her plan and are kind of pandering to her, and then it turns into a big problem. And so the story is told between multiple POVs and through flashbacks. So we get each of the girls' perspectives on that summer as that summer is happening, and then we get some chapters that flash forward to the present that tell the story from each of the girls' perspectives, because they're all kind of being called back together 25-ish years after the fact, and it's in kind of like an I Know What You Did Last Summer vibe. They get these threatening letters and need to reconnect to figure out how to navigate and move forward after this massive event that they thought was all behind them. And then as the different POVs kind of stitched together, we get an accurate representation of what actually happened, who was actually responsible, and where we're going from here. And kind of an honorable mention, and I wasn't even going to bring this book up, but now that I think about it, and now that I'm talking about If You Tell a Lie, it is making me think that I'm noticing the similarities between this novel and one that I gave a valiant effort to, but kind of put back on the shelf for now, and that is The God of the Woods. I wanted to love this so much, and I actually got about halfway through. I got a decent way through, but I need to come back to this, I think, at a different time when I'm in a different mood. I was just having a really hard time tracking all of the different perspectives and timelines, and I thought I was picking up more of a fast-paced thriller, and this is more of like a slow burn mystery. I found myself completely lost by a certain point. I mean, a chapter started and it was the perspective, I still have my bookmark there, is perspective of a character named Carl, and I have no idea who Carl is. And when I realized that I was listening to the audio and listening to this chapter from Carl's perspective, and I had never picked up the thread from where Carl's storyline originated, and I was so lost. So I tried to power through, but I think I might need to come back to that one at a different time, or just... I'll probably just move on, let's be real. But I know that a lot of people loved this, have loved this book. It just wasn't for me in the moment. And I bring that one up because it does kind of remind me of loosely the storyline for If You Tell a Lie, because The God of the Woods is about a summer camp, a girl who goes missing while she's at summer camp, and kind of exploring each person who's connected to the disappearance in some way, exploring their storylines, their experiences leading up to the disappearance, and even like family connections going back decades. So it was very kind of wandering, very meandering, and I was looking for something a lot more gripping and fast-paced. So I think that's why I preferred If You Tell a Lie, because it still had that kind of summer camp vibe, and like something went down that we have to figure out what was going on, but it was more engaging for me, more fast-paced, which I always appreciate. So those were my August reads, and I would have to say the standouts, I think I have two. The standouts were The Arrangement by Kiersten Modglin and This Girl's a Killer by Emma C. Wells. Both surprised me, both were unexpected, and in a really good way. If you made it all the way through, thanks so much for watching, and I hope that whatever you're reading is something that you're enjoying, something that's keeping you turning the pages as well. And I'd love to hear what's on your TBR, what's on your nightstand. What are you reading right now? How are you liking it? Tell me all the things. And if you are on the hunt for some new good books, keep an eye out for my next video coming out, which is going to be a preview of fall new releases. I went through and scoured the internet for all the books that are coming out in September, October, and November, and compiled a list of all the ones that I'm excited for. So we'll dive into those in my next video, and like I said, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here, and I'd love to know what you are reading down below. What are you reading? How are you feeling about it? Tell me all the things. That's all I have for you today. Until next time, happy reading, friends.